moving on to even more depressing news. In Brazil, the now former president, Dilma Rousseff, the first female president of Brazil, has been removed from office pending an impeachment trial. And Michael Telmer, who is, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is from the opposition party, has been named president while she is under impeachment. Now, there are quite a few things that you need to bear in mind with this case. First of all, you need to know that after a right-wing coup in 1964, backed by the UK and the US, Brazil managed to get back to elected free elections. And there is a left-wing party, which the shortened name is PT, which has won 4 national elections in a row. And the latest 2 was won with Dilma Rousseff as the head of the party and candidate for presidency. Now, these last 8 elections, 4 elections, the media networks, which are owned by a handful of right-wing wealthy families, has spent enormous amount of effort trying to tear President Dilma Rousseff down. A quote from Glenn Greenwald's article in The Intercept from today says, instead, as Reporters Without Borders put it earlier this month, in a barely veiled manner, the leading national media have urged the public to help bring down President Dilma Rousseff. The journalists working for these media groups are clearly subject to the influence of private and partisan interest, and these permanent conflicts of interest are clearly very detrimental to the quality of their reporting. What you need to imagine is, what if Fox News was the only news network in America? Or what if all news networks were as political and right-wing as Fox News are? What if the only media you could get the last 8 years was Obama is a tyrant, look at all the terrible things you're doing, he's taking away your freedom? You would have almost no counter-narrative. That's what happened to her. And then the media published polls saying that 60% of the public wants to see her impeached. And that gave the Senate enough cover to vote for her impeachment. Now, oddly enough, the person that they want to take over is Michael Telmer. He has a 2% approval rating. He's banned for the next 8 years from seeking election for public office. And 60% of the public, the same percent that the media there claims wants to see Dilma Rousseff impeached, 60% of the public believes that he should be impeached. And this is before he's even president. He also wants to appoint, as a solution to the hardships of the country, he wants to appoint Goldman Sachs and IMF officials to run the economy. And you can see how well that went in Greece, when the EU did the same. And if you're familiar with the author, John Perkins, he wrote a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, in which he describes the MO of what not just the US as a state, but also what certain departments in the federal US government does on their own to topple regimes, to destabilize countries, or provide opportunity for American businesses. These are the exact MOs that he describes. And not without coincidence, many Brazilians believe the US somehow to be involved in the current political coup. According to Glenn Greenwald, The Economist, which is a paper that dislikes PT and has actively sought Dilma removed from office, has denounced the impeachment and states that those who will replace her, those who are being proposed to replace her in office, her cabinet, will be worse than the current cabinet. And last year, when the impeachment was only discussed, Temer himself said, impeachment is unthinkable. It would create an institutional crisis. There is no judicial or political basis for it. Now, you may wonder why you have not heard this kind of in-depth reporting on what's happening in Brazil. And so are a lot of us. There are many people who are wondering what on earth is going on with the media. Why was Trump in triple-digit hours of coverage, Hillary in double digits, and Bernie Sanders in single digits before 2016? Why are the New York Times, who issued a five-part piece on Libya, which was done over several years, naming several high-level sources and reports, and really going far in depth into the Hillary State Department and what transpired in Libya, inside Libya, from Libyan officials, former Libyan officials, I should say, and it has been completely ignored by the media. It's basically stating that the Iraq war was better for the Middle East than Libya. That Libyan weapons are now everywhere in the Middle East, fueling conflicts, and that a high number of heavy munitions and artillery pieces are in the hands of ISIS, making them a serious threat because of Libya. But
I just want to, while we're on this, I feel inclined to touch. It's hard to believe that it's not intentional when every single time we've engaged in conflicts in the Middle East, that's how it turns out. Save, I guess, maybe the first Gulf War, but then we still did actually leave a bunch of equipment behind, which then was actually taken possession of by the local people. Like,
intentional or not, the press is not covering it.
Yeah.
Even the New York Times is not covering it. They brought it in their paper, but no one else talked about it on the New York Times. No one else talked about it. I mean, the number of investigative journalists that works for-profit media, for corporate news, can be counted on a couple of hands. And when they finally bring forth in-depth reporting, it's ignored. So what's happening? Why has Brazil not covered the news, not covered Brazil in any meaningful way? And if you don't believe me, go to The Intercept and check out Glenn Greenwald's article on the situation in Brazil. It's called "Brazil's Democracy to Suffer Grievous Blow as Unelected Corrupt Neoliberal is Installed." Glenn Greenwald is not known for pulling his punches and has grown increasingly opinionated, but he is still an incredible researcher. If you compare that with CNN's article, Dilma Rousseff, "I'm the Victim of Great Injustice" article, CNN has no background. They just accept the impeachment as fact. They accept the premise of the impeachment as fact, I meant to say. And just, they don't delve into any history. They don't delve into any motivation. They don't delve into any financial ties or anything. So it's too expensive. It's much easier just to tell a good story about what's on the surface. There's no money in delving beneath the surface. And besides, you don't want to piss off anyone at the U.S. State Department in case that they are involved in this, do you? I mean, that could lose your corporate media access. And we won't have that. We can't in any way risk that the politicians are angry with us. Now, can we? That would be just terrible. So,
And I think the dynamic that you describe does a good job of squelching upstarts or people who would want to do those types of things, and then getting shut down, being like, well, if you write that if you write that story, then we're not going to be able to go to this thing. Nobody from our network's going to be able to get invited to this thing later. So if you do that, everybody you work with is going to hate you. So I mean, you're free to do it, but like, and not to mention also, it's not just that investigative journalism uh, doesn't make a whole lot of money. It doesn't drive a lot of views in the ways that it's usually done. It also costs a lot of money. It's expensive and it takes a lot of time. And it's a lot easier to screenshot a Donald Trump tweet and talk about that for 2 minutes than it is to go in depth about how many schools there are with children that only get their meals from school. That's the only place they can reliably find a place to eat. That takes a little bit more time, a little bit more effort, and risks upsetting whichever jurisdiction or state or representative happens to be politically connected in that particular area that you're highlighting. And so
yeah,
it's the self-perpetuating mechanisms in it that also help make it so that it's so consistent and so strong in shutting down what we used to think of as what this was all about, journalism being.
yeah. And as Fritz Karl in chat is remarking, if they reported about financial ties, they would actually expose themselves.
That is also an inconvenience. Friends, family members, other associates. And like you said before, you follow the money and you know what you're gonna find. Like that's why I
Yeah,
much
I
rather.
mean, my fiance and I, we've recently started rewatching The Wire season 1, and we've gotten to the part where they're starting to follow the money. They're rolling into all sorts of trouble, and they're pontificating on you follow the drugs, you find drug dealers and drug addicts. If you follow the money, oh no, never follow the money. You never know where it's going to lead you. I mean, there might be politicians.
Yeah, exactly. So you follow the sensationalism, you'll find more sensationalism, but you follow the money and you'll figure out what that sensationalism is hiding.
Yeah.